Morning, everyone. Hi, Sharon.
Morning.
Good
Morning.
morning.
Okay, we can hear you.
Do you mind sharing your presentation, Sharon, so we can start with you so long while the other colleagues are joining?
Am I the first one to present?
No, you're not the first one. We're just testing.
Oh, okay. Right, no problem. You can see it, right?
Yes, we can see it. Yeah,
Yes.
now it's in presentation mode. All right.
Can I stop sharing?
Yes, still sharing. We can still see it. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, great.
Thumbs up. Thank you. Hi, Patricia.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
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 Patricia, did you see my notes for the closing?
I did.
Thanks.
Of was jy net vir my gevra kan ons saamwerk? Dis ek ja, ek sal enige tyd saam met
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time. Patricia, would you like us to give members 1 more minute or should we get going?
I think let's give 1 more minute. I
Okay.
think, yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we can start just in the essence of keeping to our schedule. So if I can please, as a start, please ask everybody to turn off their cameras and to mute so that there's no interference. Thank you very much. Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session. I'm going to pass on the floor to our CEO, Retabile Malamu, who's going to do the opening and welcome, and then I will continue from there. Thank you, Retabile.
Hi, Patricia. She's just held up in another meeting that she's finishing off and she'll be joining us. Would you mind going ahead and doing the welcoming and then she can maybe do the closing remarks for us?
Okay,
Thanks.
sorry, the list on my side is so long here. I wouldn't be able to tell, but thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, so all right, I'll do the opening and welcome. Thank you, everybody, for making the time to attend this very important webinar today. And I'd like to also thank the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment for making the time to share their knowledge and information around this important topic of the extended producer responsibility regulations. And I also would like to thank the team, the SAPVIA team, for arranging this and putting this together. It is really amazing on the amount of response that we've received, and I'm really happy to see that we're going to be sharing and the awareness around the EPR regulations and provide a platform for everyone in attendance to be able to get more clarity and ask the questions, the burning questions that you need to be answered. So thank you very, very much to everybody for making the time and being in attendance today. And we welcome everyone wholeheartedly to this session. So just to start off the proceedings, I would just like to introduce Jeremiah Sabande, who is the Control Environmental Officer for Waste Policy and Information Management. He's with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. And Jeremiah is going to take us through the first 3 items on the agenda this morning, and that is the EPR policy overview and regulations, and the EPR registration and reporting requirements, and the EPR compliance and enforcement. If I can please ask the audience here today, if you can just allow the presenters to continue their presentations right through to the end of the webinar, and make note of your questions, and if we can please ask those questions in the Q&A session, as well as in the chat if you need to. Thank you. Jeremiah, I pass the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good afternoon, colleagues. As I've already been introduced, my name is Jeremiah Sibande from the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. First of all, we'd like to extend our gratitude to Savia for this invitation to come and present on the EPR regulations and implement an EPR implementation in general. May I request, I'm not sure, Chair, if the presentation will be shared from your side or how we're gonna do it, then you can advise. Thanks.
Please share on your side, sir.
Okay, no, thanks. Let me quickly share it. Sorry, Chair, I seem to be struggling with sharing the presentation. I'm not sure if maybe Zimkita
Yes.
can assist me from her side. Thanks, ma'am.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Zimkita. Colleagues, I will be taking you through the presentation. My presentation will touch on 3 areas as indicated in the agenda. That would be the overview of the EPR regulations, and I'll also touch briefly also on the EPR registration and reporting, and lastly, that would be the compliance and enforcement with the EPR regulations. If we can move to the next slide, please. It seems to have disappeared from my side.
Yes, the slides are not visible any longer.
All right, let me try again. Sorry about that. Can you see it?
Not yet, ma'am.
Oh. It's not showing. I can stop and then share again.
It's not showing, Zimkita.
Okay.
Oh, yes, now we can see it. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, the colleagues, maybe just to start off my presentation, I hope we are all familiar with the waste management challenges that our country faces. And this includes, amongst others, the banning and illegal dumping of waste in our residential areas. And we also have challenges when it comes to the separation of waste at source, in particular household waste and other recyclables. All of those still remain a challenge. Then again, we also have a challenge of insufficient funding for the sound management of waste in the country. And also, we also have a challenge when it comes to the underpricing of waste management, where the real cost of waste management are not fully internalized by the consumers, even the producers of the products which end up becoming waste. And then this then results in a situation where the most preferred yet costly option of managing waste becomes then disposal. So you can move to the next slide. And again, we also have a challenge in the country with fewer waste treatment options, as we know that these also require a high investment in technology and other innovations. And again, we also have a problem in our country with the too few adequate compliant landfill sites for the management of waste. And last but not least, the inadequate compliance with regulations. So in a nutshell, this is the problem we're facing. And again, but on a global scale, colleagues are aware of the Sustainable Development Goals of 2015. I won't go into detail on those, but what basically there's goal number 12, which encourages industries and businesses and consumers to make sure that they reduce waste generation through prevention, reduction, recycling, and reuse. That goal must be achieved by year 2030. But given the challenges that I've just mentioned, you could see that we are now about 6 years away from 2030, and chances of us achieving that goal are getting slimmer almost each day. Let's move in the next slide, please. Then again, I won't talk much on this one. This is what is known generally, that as a country, South Africa, it's in a process of transitioning towards a circular economy. So then we are moving away from the linear model, the linear way of doing things. That is the take, make, dispose kind of model. Then we're moving towards a circular economy model, and then an EPR is one. The extended producer responsibility is one of the tools or legislative tools or regulatory tools that are in our basket that we are using as we're transitioning towards a circular economy. I won't say much on that. Then you can move to the next slide. Yeah, this one, colleagues, I also aware that in the national context, we have our constitution of the country, that is section 24, which is under the Bill of Rights, that which says that everyone is a right to an environment that is not harmful to their health and to their well-being, and to have their environment protected for the benefit of present and future generations through reasonable legislative and other measures. So we, as government and also as industry, we need to give effect to that right that is enshrined in section 24 of the Constitution. Then from the Constitution, as a country, we then developed a number of legislative measures. One of them being the National Environmental Management Waste Act, which is one of the enabling act of 59 2008. And when you look at that act, section 18 of the Waste Act makes provision for the minister to identify products that must be regulated, or rather that must be managed through extended producer responsibility. Extended producer responsibility as a policy, what it seeks to achieve is to sort of transfer or to extend the responsibility for the product, to extend the responsibility for the product to the producer, to include the post-consumer stage of the product life cycle. Meaning now producers or companies that produce identified products. In this case, by identified products, I'm referring to the 6 products that Minister has already identified by notice in the Gazette. There's 3 notices where Minister identified the products. The first notice is the paper and packaging notice, meaning if anyone is producing the paper and packaging notices that have been identified by the Minister in the Gazette, then that notice applies to that person. Then the second one is the electrical and electronic equipment products. If you produce any of those products that are listed in the triple E or electrical electronic equipment notice, then you are required then to comply with the EPR regulations. Then we also have the lighting products. Then we have also the lubricant oil products. We also have the portable batteries as well as the pesticides. So those 6 products are those products that Minister has identified that those products need to be managed through EPR. So if any of you are producing any of those products that I've just mentioned, then they are required then to comply with the EPR regulations as provided for under Section 18 of the Waste Act. Then we also have the National Waste Management Plan, the National Development Plan, which you all know, which is the sort of a strategic plan for the country. Then also we have the National Waste Management Strategy. The National Waste Management Strategy it's a strategy that has been developed in terms of the Waste Act, the act that I just referred to now, which is a 5-year strategy like the one that we are currently implementing or implementing was approved in 2020, then for a 5-year period. And that strategy has got targets that need to be achieved, targets on waste diversion, meaning the products that I've mentioned here must be diverted away from landfill site using EPR as a legislative measure. Then we also have the national pricing strategy. The national pricing strategy was also developed in terms of the Waste Act, which also underpins EPR. We can move to the next slide, please. Then now coming to the National Waste Management Strategy, the National Waste Management Strategy has 3 pillars. But today, for the purpose of this webinar, I will focus on pillar number 1, which is the waste minimization pillar. The waste minimization pillar seeks to minimize the impact of waste, including plastic packaging in our coast, in our rivers, in our wetlands, and our human settlement. And also it seeks to increase the rate of reuse, recycling, recovery, and alternative treatment of waste. In a nutshell, it seeks to achieve the waste management hierarchy. And over and above that, it seeks also to maximize the role of the waste sector in the circular economy. The circular economy, basically what it says, it talks about closing the loop between the extraction of resources and disposal, meaning between extraction of the resources and disposal, we have to apply a number of waste management options, which may include waste avoidance, reuse, recycling, repair, and recovery, so that we end up reducing the reliance on virgin material as production outputs, as production inputs. So this is basically the whole concept of circular economy. Then, however, this waste minimization pillar of the national waste management strategy cannot be successful if the key enabler of this pillar is the long-term collaboration and partnership between government and private sector. So that is key to the success of this of pillar number 1 of the national waste management strategy, to make sure that we divert waste away from the landfill site. You'll see in the next slide what are the targets that are in the national waste management strategy 2020. You can move to the next slide. Okay, you can see the bottom. Sorry, those are the targets. Like I indicated, the national waste management strategy is currently being implemented. For the first 5 years, the target is to make sure that 40% of waste is reduced that goes to landfill site. Then for 10-year target is 55%, 15-year target is 70%, and the ultimate goal is to make sure that there's zero waste going to landfill site beyond 15 years. We can move to the next slide, please. Then this is basically the roadmap, or how far we've come with these EPR regulations. I indicated in my previous slide that the president published the National Waste Management Act in 2008, and I also made mention of the amendment to the Waste Management Act, the Waste Act, which took place in 2016 with the introduction, or rather the insertion, of the National Waste Management Strategy. That is one of the pillars upon which EPR is based. And again, maybe even though it's not directly related to this sector, but however, just to mention it, that we also have the tire plan, which was then was implemented in 2017, which is another form of EPR. Then in 2020, which is this is key, in 2020 November, Minister published the EPR regulations in the Government Gazette, and the regulations that Minister published were accompanied by 3 notices. The first notice was the paper and packaging notice, which I already alluded to, and the second one was the electrical and electronic equipment notice, and lastly, the lighting notice. Those are the 3 notices that were first published together with the regulations in 2020. Then, however, there was a request from industry to defer the implementation of these regulations to May 2021 for implementation. And then Minister then published another notice in the Gazette with an effective date of these EPR regulations being the 1st of, or the 5th, I think the 5th of May 2021. So meaning anyone that is producing the products that Minister listed in the notices, then was supposed then to implement, or rather to comply with these regulations as from the 5th of May 2021. Then we also have the other 3 notices that were introduced last year on the 23rd of March 2023, which is the lubricant oil, pesticides, and portable batteries. So anyone producing those products have to comply with the EPR regulations, and also comply with the notices, with the targets that are published in the notices. You can move to the next slide, please. Then now, next slide, please. Just an overview of the EPR regulations. I'll just take you through these regulations. Now I've just given the background on where we're coming from with these regulations. But the EPR regulations, the main purpose, they seek to provide a sort of a framework to ensure effective and efficient management of identified end-of-life products. By the end-of-life products, I'm referring to the 6 products or 6 classes of products that I just mentioned. Then again, these regulations also seek to encourage and enable the implementation of waste economy, and also and the circular economy initiatives. As I indicated in my previous slide, that as we transition to the circular economy, so there are a number of initiatives that we encourage industry to implement. Then again, the regulations also impose measures that must be implemented by the producers of these products. What key to that is the development of the secondary market for recycling content. Remember, I mentioned there that we need to reduce the reliance on virgin material as production input, since we know that our natural resources are finite. There will come a point where we run out of those resources. So now, for us to do things in a sustainable way, we need now then to develop that secondary market for recycled content. Then there's also requirements on transformation. You'll see when I go through the obligations on the PROs and producers, what are the obligations there. Then there's also another obligation on PROs and producers to integrate the informal sector in the post-consumer waste collection value chain. colleagues, you might be aware that I mean the informal sector is key in the implementation of recycling in the country. So then now this regulation seeks then to integrate the informal sector into the collection value chain. What you see at the bottom there is what I just alluded to now, the different products that are regulated in terms of EPR. You can move to the next slide. This is the structure of the regulations. The regulations, like with all legislation, start with definitions. We have a number of definitions. Key definition there is a definition of a producer. Then again, we have got regulation 2 that talks to the purpose of the regulations, which I alluded to briefly in my previous slide. Then number 3 is the regulation 3 is the application of the regulations. These regulations do not apply to any other product. They only apply to identified products, which I already mentioned, those 6 products that have been identified by the minister to date. Then regulation 4 talks to the registration of producers, meaning producers of those identified products are required in terms of these regulations to register with the department. We have developed an EPR portal, which I will talk to, where producers of these products need to register with the department, and there are timeframes attached to those registration requirements. Then there's also the EPR measures that must be implemented. That includes obligations on producers and PROs. And we also have the minimum requirements and criteria for EPR schemes. Number 7, we've got financial arrangements. On financial arrangements, remember this: a PRO or a producer. You'll see when I go through the requirement, the regulations, how to comply with that with financial arrangements in terms of regulation 7 of the EPR regulations. Then regulation 8 talks to monitoring, reporting, and evaluation of EPR schemes. Then the regulation 9 talks about the performance review of the schemes. The EPR schemes that we're implementing at the moment are valid for 5 years, meaning the targets that are there are valid for 5 years, which is 5 years will end in 2026, meaning beyond 2026, we need to review those targets and come up with new targets. Then regulation number 10 talks to registration of PROs. Number 11 talks to the requirements of a PRO. Then number 12, like with all legislations, I mean, we have got provisions on offenses, and number 13 being penalties. Next slide, please. Then on the definitions, the key, I won't go through all the definitions, but what is key is the definition of a producer. The producer is defined as a person or category of person or a brand owner who's engaged in a commercial manufacture, conversion, or refurbishment where applicable, or import of new or used identified product as identified by minister in the gazette. So that person, if you are listed in that definition, if you are a manufacturer of an identified product, you are a converter, you do refurbishment, you are an importer of an identified product. In terms of these regulations, you are then defined as a producer. You are then considered a producer. Then again, then there's also a definition of a PRO, which is a not-for-profit company established by producers or any person operating in the industrial sector. In the notices published in terms of the Act to support the implementation of EPR scheme, and a PRO may represent individual or collective producers. You can move to the next slide, please. That was a key definition of a producer. Then now I'm coming now to the other to the scope of these regulations. I indicated in my previous slide that these regulations only apply to the products that have been identified by minister in terms of section 18(1)(a) of the Waste Act. And again, these regulations also apply to the producers of those products. And then what is key is that these regulations also apply to identified products that were placed on the market prior to these regulations coming into effect. Then coming to registration, regulation 4 requires all existing producers and in fact, existing producers to register with the department within 6 months of the publication of the notice in the Gazette. This notice was published in May, on the 5th of May 2021. From the 5th of May 2021, you count 6 months, which ends in November 2021, meaning any person, any producer, as defined in the regulations, that was producing any of those products that minister identified was required to register within that period. If you were existing at the time, or you were producing the identified product at the time minister published the notice in the Gazette. Then again, when it comes to new producers that were not in existence when the notice was published by minister, those ones have 3 months of registration to register with the department, 3 months of being established, then to register with the department. We can move to the next slide. Then this one, we just prepared this presentation to show you how are we doing in terms of registration. You could see that at the moment, we on our EPR portal that the department developed, we have registered over 1,608 as of 5th of August 2024 of producers and PROs with the department. Then across the 6 sectors, you can see there, I guess, I mean, maybe for Savia, because they're mostly in the EEE sector, you could see there how many PROs are operating in a sector, how many producers are registered to date, and what's the total of registered PROs and producers. We can move to the next slide, please. Then coming to the EPR measures to be implemented by producers and PROs. A producer of a product has got 3 options that are provided for in the regulations. The first one is to establish and implement an EPR scheme. Or join an EPR scheme that is run by a PRO. You cannot join an EPR scheme run by another producer. It must be run by a PRO if you opt for option number 2. Or you can appoint a PRO to establish and implement a scheme on your behalf. Those are the 3 options that are available to a producer in terms of these regulations. However, even if a producer joins a PRO, that does not mean that the producer cannot be held accountable for the operation and the performance of an EPR scheme. And another EPR measure that is imposed on the producer is to conduct a life cycle assessment in relation to the identified product in accordance with applicable standards within 5 years of implementation of EPR scheme. At the moment, Chair, we are in year 3 of EPR implementation, and this provision says life cycle assessment must be conducted within 5 years. So we are running out of time in terms of complying with this provision, and it also gives clarity on what should be covered by the life cycle assessment as a minimum. It talks about the minimization of material use in the identified product, design of a product to facilitate reuse, recycling, recovery, reduction of environmental toxicity from the resulting post-consumer waste stream. And also, there's another obligation on PROs and producers to implement environmental labels and declaration of identified products in line with SANS, that's Standard South African National Standards 14021 and 14024. That must be within the period of 3 years, which means by this year, there must be full compliance with that requirement when it comes to the implementation of environmental labels. Can move to the next slide, please. Then now, coming again on the obligations of PROs and producers. Then another obligation is that these PROs and producers must contract for the collection, recycling, and recovery of identified products through a fair and transparent process. That's where the whole issue of transformation comes in, where with the focus mainly on the youth, people with disabilities, and women. So meaning when a PRO, because a PRO have to report to the department on how much of the identified product and their resulting waste streams did they collect. Then again, they must also report on who did they contract with, taking into account what these regulations require. Then must also manage the service rendered by those service providers that they contract with. Then bullet number 3, these PROs and producers must also cooperate with municipalities within 3 years of the implementation of EPR scheme to increase the recovery of identified product from municipal waste. So it's an obligation in the regulations that is imposed on PROs to cooperate with municipalities to ensure that there's a recovery of these identified products, so that those identified products do not end up, in a landfill. Then again, integration of informal waste collectors, reclaimers, or pickers into the post-consumer collection value chain. And lastly, the development and establishment of secondary markets for recycled quantity. I've already referred to this in my previous slide. Next slide, please. Then again, it talks about the utilization of existing infrastructure. We know that investment in infrastructure is cost. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of money. It's costly. So then now we encourage, these EPR regulations encourage PROs to work together. Meaning when it comes to the sharing of infrastructure for collection or for recycling or for any other waste management option that they choose to implement. Then another obligation is the compensation of waste pickers, reclaimers, and informal waste collectors for the services that they provide. What these obligations says is that PROs must then register the waste pickers with the National Registration Database for collection services and environmental benefits through a collection service fee, meaning PROs must compensate waste pickers with a collection service fee by November 2022, meaning the compensation should have started by November 2022. And again, the collection service fee shall be reviewed by the department annually. Then I already spoken to the issue of transformation and the focus on SMMEs, in particular, women, youth, and persons with disabilities, and the promotion of small businesses. Can move to the next slide, please. Then Regulation 7, which is key, Chair. Regulation 7 talks about the funding of the EPR scheme. It says that a PRO that establishes and implements an EPR scheme must, together with its members, determine a proposed EPR fee and apply that fee proportionally to all members based on the identified product placed on market. This is key. Since we are in the 3rd year of EPR implementation, PROs have been have submitted the proposed EPR fees to the department, and then once these proposed EPR fees have been received by the minister, then the minister, in terms of this of Regulation 7.2, is then required to then request the Minister of Finance, or rather to obtain the Minister of the concurrence on the proposed EPR fee from the Minister of Finance within 60 days. So this is how EPR scheme are funded. They are funded through the EPR fees that PROs in this case collect from their producer members. But that EPR fee must have been concurred to or concurred with by the Minister of Finance. We can move on to the next slide, please. Then Regulation 7, sub-Regulation 7B, paragraph B, talks about the administration cost for EPR schemes. We are now in the 3rd year of EPR implementation, that is year 2024. The admin cost at the moment is kept at 12%, meaning a PRO can use only 12%, a maximum of 12% of the EPR fee that they collected from their producer members for admin cost, that is cost which includes running of the EPR of the PRO salaries of the PRO staff, and setting up of ICT systems and other overhead costs. So then that admin cost is kept at 12%, meaning the balance, which is I think it's about 82%. Yes, 82% should be invested in the infrastructure, in the collection, and also establishment of infrastructure to make sure that there is diversion of waste in the country. About 82% of that. That is in terms of this. Hence, since PROs are not profit companies, so the EPR fee that they collect from their producer members are purely for cost recovery purposes, because they incur cost in implementing the scheme. So then they need them to be compensated on that for through the EPR fee. Can move to the next slide, please. Then coming to reporting, as with all legislation, there must be reporting. There are a number of reports that need to be submitted to the department in terms of the regulations. Regulation 5 of the EPR regulations require that a PRO or a producer must prepare an internal biannual financial audit report. And that report can be made available to the department on request. That they don't necessarily have to submit. There's no timelines when it comes to submission of the internal biannual financial audit report. However, it must be made available when requested. And also it must also be made available to the independent financial auditor. That is the first report. The second report is the external annual financial audit report. This report is provided for in terms of Regulation 5A, subregulation E, 5B, 5 cap B, E. That one must be submitted within 60 days after the finalization of the audit, and a summary of that report must be made available to the public must be uploaded on SAWIC, that is on the EPR portal that is accessible through SAWIC for the public, for public access. That's a requirement in terms of Regulation 5 Cap A and Regulation 5 Cap B. Then bullet number 3 talks about the annual financial plan and budget. This is provided for in terms of Regulation 7.5, Regulation 7 Cap A5, and Regulation 6. This one must be submitted by 30 November for the following year. For example, now we are in year 3 of EPR implementation, which is year 2024. The annual financial plan and budget for year 2024 was submitted, must have been submitted to the department by the 30th of November 2023. Then we also have the interim performance report, which is provided for in terms of Regulation 8.1A. It must be submitted within 4 weeks of the conclusion of the 6-month period. So meaning like in this year 2024, we have already received interim performance reports. We received them by the 31st of July 2024. Those are the mid-year reports that need to be submitted to the department in terms of this provision in the EPR regulations. Then we also have the annual performance reports. Those ones are provided for in terms of Regulation 8.1 CD. They must be submitted within 3 months of the conclusion of the year end. The year end here, we're referring to the end of a calendar year, which is the 31st of December. Then this annual performance report must be submitted 3 months after the end of the calendar year, meaning by the 31st of March of the following year. Next slide, please. Those are the key reports that that need to be submitted. Now coming to offenses, I'll touch base on just highlight just a few. It says a person commits an offense if that person contravenes or fails to comply with Regulation 4. Regulation 4 talks to registration. If you don't register as a producer with the department in terms of these regulations, then you are in contravention of this provision in the regulations. Then Regulation 5 talks mostly about obligations. This includes, amongst others, the obligation on a producer or a PRO to compensate waste pickers or informal waste collectors other obligations that are listed in those provisions. Then there's also Regulation 7.1, which I just spoke to now. It talks about the submission of a proposed EPR fee to the minister for consideration and also to obtain concurrence from the Minister of Finance. That again, failure to do that, if a PRO collects an EPR fee without having obtained concurrence on that fee from the minister, then that is an offense in terms of these regulations. And Regulation 8 in general talks to reporting, meaning failure to report. I mentioned the different types of reports in my previous slide, meaning failure to submit the reports as prescribed in Regulation 8. It's an offense. Then there's also Regulation 9, which also talks to, amongst others, issues of verification audits that are conducted by the department, or I mean at the PRO or producer facilities. And Regulation 10 talks to PROs specifically, the requirement for them to register, and then what are the requirements that they need to comply with in terms of that provision. So these are the provisions that failure to comply with constitute an offense in terms of the regulations. Then we can move to the next slide, please. This in summary is what I just spoke about there. It talks about the main regulation that you need to take care of. I already spoke about registration, which is Regulation 4, registration of producers, and Regulation 10, registration of PROs, and 5A and 5B talks to the obligations on PROs and producers implementing EPR schemes. And Regulation 6 talks to the requirements, which includes, amongst others, the life cycle assessment and other requirements that are listed there in the regulations. Regulation 7 talks to the financial arrangements I spoke to, which is key. And again, Regulation 8 talks to reporting. Regulation 9 talks to the review of the scheme. Regulation 11 talks to the governance structure of the PRO. Can move to the next slide, please. Can move to the slide. Yes. Sorry for this one. I think if you can just move to the slide before this one. Let me. Okay, we can move on to the next slide, please. Thanks. I wanted to touch briefly on the this one are some this is a in conclusion, these are some of the learnings that we've picked up as we implementing the EPR. One of them is some of the findings is that since we are in the third year of EPR implementation, we have implemented EPR for the first two years, that is starting from 2022 and implementation for the purpose of reporting 2022 and 2023. Then one of the challenges is when it comes to reporting is that most producers and some PROs, they are reporting in tonnages that are not allowed in terms of the regulations. The regulations tells us that if you are reporting, you must report in tons. If you tell us how much of a product we place on the market, those quantities must be in tons, and then how much are you collecting? That also must be in tons. It cannot be in kilograms, cannot be in volumes, cubic meters, but it must be in tons, so that you can be able to calculate the diversion, the performance in terms of diversion. Then there's also another challenge with a non-achievement of targets that are in the notices. This is one of the biggest challenges we picked up when we reviewed the reports. And then based on the above, then there's a huge demand, or that there's a need now to strengthen compliance and enforcement of these regulations. And the department is currently dealing with that. But at the moment, I must indicate, Chair, the focus is on free riders, those producers who are not yet registered with the department, who are in contravention of Regulation 4 of the EPR regulations. So now the focus is on those, and now we have got a compliance strategy in place. Now we will which we are implementing in phases. Then we are in the process of moving towards those that are not reporting at all. those again, enforcement action will be instituted against those PROs and producers. And also, and lastly, we'll also focus on those that are registering, reporting, but are not achieving the target. But on those, the ones that are not achieving the target, at least we have adopted a more a collaborative approach on dealing with those. So I think yes, but the key focus now is on free riders. This is what, yeah, exactly. This is the slide I was looking for. Thanks, thanks for on this one. Now I'm on compliance and enforcement. We have categorized non-compliances into 4, and then that is as part of the compliance strategy that the department has developed and is currently implementing. The first one are free riders, those that are not registered at all. Those one are the first target when it comes to enforcement. Then number 2 is those that registered late registration. For those that registered late, I indicated that if you were producing the identified product by when these regulations came into operation in 2021, you are required to register within 6 months. If you fail to register, we cannot just register you straight away. However, we request, in fact, we instruct you to submit written reasons why you registered late. Then, based on the assessment of the reasons that you would have submitted, then a decision will be made to condone or to grant condonation for failure to register. Then, but that condonation goes with a condition to say, since if you were a member of a PRO, but you didn't register, then now you need to make sure that you comply with these EPR regulations as from the May 2021. If it includes paying, if there's outstanding payments that we have to do in terms of EPR fee to a PRO, we have to backdate that payment from that, to that date, or on which you are supposed to from that date on which you are supposed to register. That is the condition that goes with the condonation. Then another phase of compliance is to target those that are registered but not reporting. Those ones there's a process underway to identify those and then enforcement action to be taken against those. Then lastly, those that are registered, reporting, but do not meet the target. Like I indicated, on those ones we have adopted a collaborative approach. How does it work? The collaborative approach works like this. First of all, once the reports have been submitted, the department will review the reports and make findings. And those findings will be communicated to the PRO or the producer. Then from there, there will be an engagement between the PRO and the producer. But before the engagement, there will be some verification audits that are conducted to confirm what was reported to the department. Then from there will be engagement with the PRO or the producer on an action plan on how to deal with these non-compliances that have been picked up during the review. Then and those action plans would go with time frames to say, please fix 1, 2, 3 by this day. Then failure to do that, then we move to phase 2, which is more of a stricter enforcement mechanism against those that are registered, reporting, but fail to meet the targets. Can you move to the next slide, please? My closing remarks, Chair, is that what needs to be taken note of is that EPR is part of a package of policy measures that we seek to achieve South Africa's waste reduction and minimization, and we are facilitating our transition towards circular economy. This is one of the tools we're using. There are a number of other tools, but EPR is one of them. Then on the second year of implementation, we saw some good progress towards the establishment of schemes. Most PROs now are in operation, which is something we appreciate. And again, some PROs are doing quite well when it comes to collect to the targets that are in the notices, the collection targets, recycling targets, use targets, and then that you would appreciate. However, there's still a room for more improvement in terms of the performance of the schemes to address some of the challenges. Some of these challenges are being addressed, are being communicated to the PROs through the engagements that follow after review of the reports. Then lastly, the government will continue to work closely with producers and PROs and other stakeholders to build this partnership and to promote collaboration. One of these engagements or partnership is this. The department also conducts what we call EPR roadshows with industry and other stakeholders to make sure that we share information on EPR and we promote a culture of EPR compliance. And there's also, I mean, engagement like this one. We have this webinar with Savia, where we're trying to have this discussion and to present EPR performance in the country. Yes, so those are some of the measures that we have put in place. We can move. I think there's a slide. This one is the last slide, I guess. Yes. No, thank you so much, Chair. That is the end of my presentation. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very, very much for that very interesting presentation, Jeremiah. I'm sure there is a lot of questions. We already have some in the chat, but we will keep that for the Q&A session later. For now, thank you very much, Jeremiah. For now, we will move to the next presenter, which is Mr. Donald Seswana, who is the Deputy Director of Waste Policy and Information Management. And Donald will be speaking today about the EPR portal and its functionalities. Thank you, Donald. I pass the floor to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As indicated, my name is Donald Sahaswana. I work with Jeremiah and the colleagues within the branch Chemicals and Waste Policy and Information Management is our directorate. I'm going to share my slides. Give me a moment. Just give me a moment, please. Let me know if you can see. Can you see my slides?
Not yet. We're seeing your screen.
Okay, give me a moment. Can you see?
Yes, we can see them. They're not in slide mode though.
Sorry. Is it clearer now? Is it clearer now,
Yes.
colleagues?
Yeah, but yeah, that's fine. We can see both screens. We can see the next slide as well, but I think that's fine.
Oh, I don't know what happens like that.
Do you have it in presentation mode?
Yes, I do. So, colleagues, I'm going to take you through the EPR portal. And as it was communicated, my presentation outline covers these broad areas. The background to the EPR, I would not go into that because my colleague Jeremiah has already addressed those areas. I will zoom straight into the registration and the portal itself. So this is just the information Jeremiah already covered. I won't go through to that, but safe to say that the portal was developed to make sure that the implementation of the EPR regulation, especially on the reporting side, is achieved. Again, the purpose, Jeremiah dealt with that. So this is where I would start with my slides. So we developed the EPR portal so that we can be able to have the PROs and the producers to register and also submit the reports. This is the new SAWIC page. Those who are familiar with the SAWIC, we are in a process to migrate into the new platform. But on the new platform, what is already there is the EPR that is now fully functional. Excuse me, colleagues. So I highlighted the URL link there, where you can be able to find the EPR portal on the SAWIC page. So the EPR page have a number of side menus. It also has the login and the new registration form at the bottom right. So there is no physical documents that needs to be submitted to the DFFE. Everything needs to be done online. And on the left-hand side, you can see it gives you information on who should register, how to register, and so on. All that is done online. So in terms of the EPR search options, so there's various search options that are available to the producers or the PRO. They can also do the search by either using a name, registration number, producer type, etc. So part of the EPR portal development, we also made it easy for the producer and PROs to have tutorials that will then take them through the steps on how to implement the system. So there's also an option on the EPR portal where if you have forgotten your password, you can make the request and find it on the system. And also the EPR tutorials.
Apologies for interrupting. There's comments that the slides are too small, that they can't see the details. So if I can ask Zimkita to please share the slides on her side. Is that okay, Donald?
Yeah, are they too small? It's quite big on my side. Maybe it's because of this what do you call it? The double screens. Is it easier now?
So we are sharing now.
Is it easier now? Can you see it now?
Yes, we can see now. You can continue with your presentation. If we can maybe go to the previous slide and continue from there, because that's where it essentially got smaller. Thank you.
Okay. So now so this is where I was saying the EPR system has the share links, and the search links. You can also be able to check who, in terms of the regulations, is supposed to register, and also have options where you can select to search for different registrations, either PROs or producers. I also indicated that in terms of my next slide, that on this you are able to then see, or if you have forgotten the password, you can be able to then access that on the with the link that is showing on the arrows. And also there are tutorial that have been provided as part of this website that would help the PROs and the producers to access the steps in terms of how they can go about using the EPR portal. These are the links to the tutorials. Colleagues can be able to access them. They give the tutorials on the registration and the reporting procedures. Then also on this page now, the producer or the PROs can be able to complete the registration form by providing the details of the producer or the PROs. As for PROs, the PROs in terms of these regulations, they need to be NPCs or NPO, non-profit organizations, and therefore such information as part of the registration is important and it needs to be uploaded on the system. So I'm highlighting here the areas that you need to complete and also attach the documentation.
I'm sorry, Donald.
Yes.
What slide number are you on?
I'm not sure. Do they have numbers? Just give me a moment.
Okay, it's at the bottom there.
It says slide 11.
Okay.
Am I the one sharing or you the one sharing?
I'm the one sharing.
Oh, okay.
Yes, you can just say next slide when you're ready.
Okay. No, that's fine. I thought I was the one sharing. Okay, cool. Now, if your upload after registrations, then there is also an option for uploading if your registration has been referred back because of what my colleague indicated earlier, where if you are a late registration, you may be required to submit your motivation or reasons for why you registered late. So those can also be uploaded on the portal. Next slide. The next slide here, the producers and the PROs have a multi-selection option for the register change or a request for a change of registration. This may be either a transfer of ownership if a producer who is registered no longer or has sold the business, or if they have registered erroneously, or for any other request, then there is an option on the portal where they can be able to request the changes to their registration. Next. So on this one now, this is now on the PRO and the producer subscription. This is where the PROs can be able to view the list of producers who are registered and available for linking or subscribing. This should also help us as the DFFE to be able to see which producers are registered but not subscribed to any PRO, because the expectation is that if you are a producer and registered, you should either be subscribed to a PRO or you should be implementing your own scheme. So this is that option that is available for that functionality. Next slide. Then the PROs, this is where now, then when they click, then they can be able to send that request for subscription or linking. And then everything that happens on the system, there are automated letters from the system that are giving an update to the producer or PRO that is registering, and then those are sent from the system. In terms of now submission of reports to the system, my colleague also indicated the different reports. I won't go through that. He explained what those are for, but what is important, next slide, on the reporting side. So we developed this portal to accept quantitative report inputs from the PROs and producers implementing own scheme. And that same data would still be declared and signed off in both the interim and annual reports that must be uploaded on the system. But I think the reason we have created those input fields for the data on diversion and so on is so that we don't have to go through 80 reports to get the quantities and the diversion rates from the EPR schemes. So it should help us to get consolidated figure but individually from the PROs, that information would still have to be uploaded on the system. Next slide. In terms of the submission, there is a drop down of the selection that is available to the PROs and the producers implementing own schemes, where they indicate whether it's an annual report, annual financial plan and budget, and so on. And then they have to go through on the portal to select the correct report and then submit. Next slide. So the PROs also have the option to select either manual capturing or an upload of the required reports. So the manual here, this is where you input the specific figures for the different products or class of products that have been identified, or you can then upload with the spreadsheet so that it updates the system. Next slide. In terms of the submission of the report, in terms of the manual capturing, this would be the kind of fields that the PRO will have, or producer implementing on scheme will then be able to capture those required input fields there. Next slide. So again, here, if you are not using the manual capture, then you can then download the reporting template and then input it and then submit on the system through an upload. As you can see, there is an upload field there at the bottom. That is where you attach the specific templates or the reports or signed reports that the PRO would want to share with the department. Next slide. Okay, but maybe also just to indicate something, colleagues, as the PROs are submitting the reports, there is an input field there where you need to indicate which of the files that you are uploading is the summary report that must be available to the public. So it is important that we clear that upfront so that we don't have to get back to you to check whether or not we can share certain reports on the front end of the website. I think it is also in the regulations that a summary report needs to be available. We do have a lot of PIA requests where the either members of the public or whoever wants to access the reports that are being submitted. And I think it is important that out of all the reports that you are submitting, you also need to indicate those that are minimum in terms of the regulation requirements that should already and publicly be made available. Those summary reports, so that we don't have to go through too many PIA requests to access your reports. I think in general, that would be the end of my presentations, the colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that, Donald. I think that gives us a very good idea and more clarification around the SOEC system. And thank you for explaining that. We will now move on to the next presenter, which is Ms. Sharon Magomotsi, who is the Director of Hazardous Waste Management within the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. And today she's going to present on the EPR for electrical and electronic equipment and lighting. Thank you. I pass the floor to Sharon. You may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, and good afternoon to everyone. I hope you can see my slide.
Yes, it is clearly visible. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. As indicated, I will be presenting on the EPR notices for the electrical and electronic equipment sector, as well as the lighting sector notices. Okay, I'm unable to scroll down. Just give me a moment. Just gonna stop sharing and share again. All right. My presentation outline looks at the EEE notice, that's electrical electronic notice. I will touch on the definition, the purpose of the notice, the scope, the identified products that are within the notice, and then speak to the targets that are within the EE notice. And then I will immediately move on to the lighting notice, following the same order as the presentation for the EE notice. I think I want to start by indicating that when you look at the notices of all the identified products as mentioned by my colleague Jeremiah in the beginning, you have to read them together with the EPR regulation. In the absence of doing that, you will not be able to understand what the EPR obligations are. So it's very important to remember that when you look at the EE notice, it may look very small, as in like there are only few sections included within the notice itself, but in fact, the bulk of the content is in the EPR regulations. Why we did that is because we realized that there is no need for us to duplicate all the individual requirements in each of the notices, as in when we identify new products that may be required to implement an EPR scheme or EPR obligations. The definition, as indicated, basically defines electrical and electronic equipment as those equipments that are dependent on electric currents or electromagnetic fields in order to work properly, and equipment for the generation, transfer, and measurement of such currents and fields, and designed for use with a voltage rating not exceeding 1,000 volts for alternative current, for alternating current, and 1,500 volts for direct current. And also within, and keeping in mind what I just said now about how you need to read the notices is you need to take into consideration the definitions of the producer who is an obligated party in terms of implementation of EPR. The definition of which includes a producer being an importer, a brand owner as well as a producer, meaning OEM. Okay, The purpose of the electrical and electronic equipment notice requires that a producer of a class or a class of producers, meaning that you can be one or you could be a group of producers of the products that I will speak to in the next slide, are supposed to make sure that they have procedures, processes, and invest resources to implement an EPR measures. And they need to take responsibility for the products at the post-consumer phase. What this means is that you need to be able, when you, and this is the thinking that we're trying to inculcate, at the point where you decide to design a product, keep in mind the requirements that you need to meet in ensuring that that particular product can be recyclable. It can be, you can extract materials from it either for reuse in the production of new products. So that circularity that Jeremiah spoke about earlier. And I think we're seeing an increasing requirements in other countries where already there are set targets of how much of recycling content are you putting into your new products that you intend to put on the market. And we as a country, we will progressively eventually get there. EPR is still fairly new to us compared to those countries that have now progressed in setting those type of targets for new products and the recycling content. The scope of the notices basically indicate very clear that there is a mandatory take back of EEE products at the end of life that must be implemented. And this is from the first year of the date of implementation. And we indicated earlier in Jeremiah's presentation that our first year of implementation was in 2022. 2023 was the second year of implementation. We're currently in the third year of implementation. And there's basically the identified products for which this notice applies to is the batteries, the electrical goods, all electrical goods, electronic consumer goods, electronic industrial goods, and we are excluding the lighting equipment. We have a separate notice for lighting equipment and a separate notice for portable batteries, which I will not speak to, but I will speak to the lighting notice. So questions related to, do we fall under the scope of the EE notice? I think you can clearly see there that the battery sector, battery storage would fall under this notice. The wind energy sector will fall under this notice, and the solar PV sector would fall under this notice as well. Targets, we've set targets for the EE that needs to be collected and recycled. These were based on a baseline that was established at the time of 360,000 tons. We're reflecting them in terms of tonnages, in terms of what needs to be collected and recycled. We are currently in our considerations of reviewing or amending the targets to express them in percentages instead of tonnages. So that's something that would possibly be different in the not so distant future for the EE sector. So the changes from tonnages. But for right now, if you pick up the notice, it's expressed in tonnages and should be reported in tonnages. So in brief, that's it for the lighting, for the EE sector. And I will now move on to the lighting sector notice. So following the same outline, the definition, basically how we're defining lighting equipment in the lighting notice is an electrical and electronic equipment that is used for producing artificial light or illumination, and also includes any peripherals of the lighting body, such as luminaires, switch components, ballast fixtures, and modules. You will see when we get to the identified products under this notice that these are also included under those identified products. And yes, we've had this question many times. Why did you decide to have a separate notice for lightings and lighting and electrical equipment? It is, as you can see there in the definition. It has its own history in terms of where this comes from, and that history includes the fact that although EPR is a new concept in South Africa, the idea of having separate plans or schemes for certain identified products existed for some years now, as far back as 2017, when the department published notices for Section 28, which is industry waste management plans. And then later, when we had a change in administration in 2020, we switched to extended producer responsibility requirements. And this was at the request of the producers who wanted to be in charge of implementing their own schemes without government collecting fees. So we are doing what was required by producers, and that's why we always remind them that it is you who came to us and asked to implement these schemes. So yeah, here the purpose again, very similar to all the other identified products notices that you will come across. It's basically mandating those producers of lighting products to set up procedures and processes and invest resources to implement extended producer measures that are linked to the collection of the products at the post-consumer phase, that ensures that these products are reused, recycled, recovered, refurbished where possible. And disposal, to be honest, is actually not allowed. And why I'm saying that is because we prohibited the disposal of lighting products or lamps to landfill since 2016. We have the norms and standards for the disposal of waste to landfill. Within that norms and standard, there is a list of prohibited waste streams that should not be disposed to landfill. What that means is that then alternative means of managing those waste streams must be utilized. And we do have recycling technologies in South Africa that has been operating for quite some time now for the lighting equipment. Same applies to the electrical and electronic equipment. They've been prohibited for disposal to landfill since 2021, August 2021. So yeah, any disposal of these products to landfill will be against the law. So the scope of the lighting sector notice is also very similar. It's basically saying there must be mandatory take back of the identified products. And this has to be implemented from date, the first year of coming into effect of the notice, which was the notice was gazetted in 2021, first year of implementation being 2022. The identified products for the lighting sector notice includes the gas discharge lighting and its subcategories, all lighting emitting diode lighting sources and types. We have signal lighting as well as the associated equipment. We have luminous and lighting equipment fixtures or modules or associated electrical components. We have laser, pixel, and ultraviolet irradiation or ultraviolet germicidal irradiation lighting. Automotive lighting and luminaires, incandescent light bulbs and halogen, as well as off-grid solar-powered lighting. Lighting targets, they're very small. I'm sure you're struggling to see them now being projected on the screen, but you can clearly see them in the notice when you look at it. It's basically all those products that I've mentioned in my earlier slide, as well as the percentage targets that needs to be achieved in terms of collection, recovery, and recycling. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I just want to mention, just based on some of the questions that I've seen been raised here that the expectation is that because we also get questions, a lot of questions being asked as to whether, you know, does my sector fall under the EE notice? Are our products, you know, falling under this notice? And the answer is yes. And interestingly enough, as a department, we've engaged with SAWIA as far back as 2020, when, you know, when we were still in the process of finalizing and drafting the notices. We've engaged through some of our colleagues. Michelle Govender has presented at conferences. I think in 2021, 2022, I can't recall exactly which years, but several times. We've had several queries and one-on-one engagement with some of the stakeholders where we clarified the same. But today we also offer ourselves to you to be able to provide further clarification. We are open, of course, to engaging with one-on-one producers or directly with the association on specific questions that members might have. We found that, you know, often when we are in forums like this, people don't. Some people are not comfortable to raise questions and would rather, you know, have them written and sent through someone who would convey the message on their behalf. So we are open to responding to queries that would be sent to us, or even engaging directly to talk about specific issues that might be maybe unique to you as a producer, that, you know, where you need to get more detailed clarifications on these. That's it from our side. Patricia, I think we can talk more when we get to the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you very much for that in-depth look at the specific notices applicable. And yes, as I said, there's you know, if there's any questions, we can run through them in the Q&A session. So the next item on the agenda is going to be presented by Mr. Kasment Mawele, who is the director of the waste economy and is a director and a waste economy analyst. And he's also with the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. And I would like to welcome him to do his presentation, which is on improving reporting on jobs by PROs and producers. Kasmet, pass the floor to you. Thank you. Yep, we just need to share the presentation.
Yeah, good afternoon, colleagues. Afternoon, colleagues.
Good afternoon. We can hear you. Your screen is up, but there's a blank slide or just a template.
I know it's perfect.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Yeah, let me appreciate the opportunity afforded to me, as they've already indicated. My name is Kasment Mawele. Yeah, let me start with my presentation. The title of my presentation is Improving Reporting on Jobs by PROs and Producers in the EPR System. The reason we decided to have such a presentation is that we realized that there were inconsistencies in terms of reporting on jobs. So hence we started this process. So we're going to look at the content of my presentation. So it's going to be introduction, but most of the things have been covered during Jeremiah's presentation. It's going to be the purpose of the EPR regulation. Again, this was covered. And then we're going to look at EPR monitoring and reporting requirement. We're going to look at the aim of the presentation or this particular engagement. We're going to zoom into employment. What exactly is employment? Then we're going to move to POPI Act. There are some people who are not giving us evidence citing POPI Act. And last, we're going to look at reporting. Then we're going to look at conclusion and lesson learned. So I think Jeremiah spoke to this, that when these regulations were implemented. So we look at the 6 waste stream. They've already spoke about this. So it's paper and packaging, EEE that Sharon already presented on, as well as lighting. So these ones are the new ones that were implemented last year: lubricant oil, pesticides, and portable batteries. So I'm gonna skip this because Jeremiah has already presented on this. So I want to get to EPR reporting. So we look at what needs to be submitted. So the information that is required is performance against the published targets, breakdown of the allocation of the extended producer responsibility fee, performance on all finance matters, governance related matters, impact on the environment, recommendations in the event of non-compliance, status of the EPR fee. And for the purpose of this presentation, we're going to look at number of jobs created. So here I'm just listing them, but Donald explained in details in terms of what each of this reporting entails. So why are we invited? Normally when we present to PRO, we just explain to them, why are we here? Why are we presenting? So the idea is to make sure that everyone understands employment the same way. So there's no point that we go to one PRO, their understanding of employment is different from another person. We need to highlight reporting challenges so that when there are challenges, we address them. EPR reporting requirement on jobs. There is some sort of evidence that it is required that you provide when you say you've provided jobs. Understanding of the POPI Act, it's very important that we understand what exactly the POPI Act says in terms of providing information to the third party, especially when it's a government department. And then you specify lawful processing of personal information. Very important, we want to promote the use of standard template. What we do normally after we receive the information from the PROs, we do analysis. So we're going to look at in terms of job assessment report and compare jobs that were created between 2022 and 2023 as per submitted reports. So I've already spoke to this. Overall, the engagement aims to improve reporting on jobs created by PROs and producers. And since we started this presentation last year, there's been improvement in terms of reporting. So we start by looking at jobs, what exactly we regard as employment. So we use a standard definition that is used by Stats SA. So in terms of defining an employment, so I say each and every PRO must define employment the same way as used by Stats SA. What is employment? So we say it's persons employed in the market production activities, those aged 15 to 64. So those are the people that we say they're employed. So you need to work for a wage, salary, commission, or payment in kind. So I will leave the others because they refer to other type of employment. For the purpose of this presentation and PROs, we refer to people who have worked for salary, commission, or wage. Now we say what types of employment are reported on the system. So we say we are looking for new jobs or employment opportunities. This refers to positions created and added during the reporting period under consideration. So if you create jobs in 2024, new jobs, you got to report on new jobs created in 2024. We are not looking for jobs that were created in 2023 or 2022. What type of jobs? This include roles created by the PRO. So if as a PRO, you think maybe you need an accountant or an auditor, and then you create employment, those will be included, as well as those generated by recyclers or by scheme members who contribute to the waste sector or are integrated into the value chain. So if you are a PRO and you are supporting a recycling or scheme member, and then they employ people, you will report them under the PRO. Additionally, jobs held by waste pickers or collectors affiliated with or registered under the recycle or buyback centers affiliated with the scheme are also included in this reporting. In the context of the EPR scheme, reported jobs include both direct and indirect jobs created because of the scheme's activity. I've already touched on direct jobs, but I will explain again. Direct jobs within the EPR scheme are employment opportunities that are created directly and offered by the scheme itself. So if your scheme is ABC and then you create employment within ABC, then that will be counted here. Indirect jobs refers to employment opportunities that are consequence of an EPR scheme activities and are intrinsically linked to the EPR value chain. These jobs may not be directly employed by the EPR scheme, but are sustained due to its operations. So here, if you are working with a buyback center that you are supporting and the buyback center creates employment, this will be counted as indirect jobs. So these are some of the questions that we were getting when we were doing this presentation. What happens if one employment opportunities were multiple resignation or termination? What happens if for one employment opportunity there were multiple resignation or termination? So here we are counting employment. Every time employment is created or a new person is employed, we will count that. So if you had 5 or 6 resignation, you will say that you've created 6 employment. Is filling a vacant job regarded as created a new employment? Remember that the previous person has left, the new person has come, so we'll include that as a job. Does the definition of employment cover waste pickers who are non-South Africans, documented or undocumented? We are looking at employment that has been created or sustained. So if you employ waste pickers and they are non-South Africans, they are included here. Whether they are documented or undocumented, it's not important. Is the list of waste pickers supported sufficient? List without evidence. So this one, we are not so fussy about it as long as you provide evidence for formal jobs or direct jobs, we are fine. What is the difference between a job and a headcount? So a job like this one speaks to question number 1, where they talk about employment and resignation. So a job is every time a person is employed, we regard that as a job. So it's not necessarily a headcount. According to POPI Act, I'm not obliged to provide people's identity document to a third party. I will discuss this when we come to POPI. Last year I was on contract and reported as such. However, this year I am permanent. Was employment created or not, keeping in mind that everything else stays the same except that employment status changes from temporary to employment. So you will count this as a new employment because your title has changed. Does dual roles and responsibility count as 2 jobs or what? Unfortunately, we employed one person to two jobs, so it will be 1 job created. So we look at the protection of personal information. So what does POPI Act? POPI Act aims to implement the right of privacy enriched in South African Constitution by protecting individual data from misuse. So basically, when you provide data to DFFE or any government department, it must not be misused. The law defines strict guidelines on how organizations must collect and process personal data. So this is to avoid a situation where people say we cannot give you this information because of this and that. In terms of the confidentiality, the information provided to DFFE, it's very safe with us. The POPI Act outlines strict guidelines on how responsible parties should collect and process personal information. Why do we need you to submit evidence? Normally, Auditor General, they will come to say to DFFE and say, you say you created 200 jobs, show us evidence, and we need to show them evidence. The mission of the EPM is to develop and coordinate evidence-based planning, monitoring, and evaluation of development outcomes. So sometimes also the EPME, they come to us and say, you say you created employment, where is the evidence? So we need to submit evidence. In terms of POPI Act, we say that as DFFE, we will adhere to all 8 conditions for the lawful processing of data as outlined in Section 4.1 of the POPI Act. My apologies for this. It's just I love animations. So these are the conditions. I'll not go through them. So we look at the reporting and compliance. In terms of reporting requirements on the number of jobs, so we are providing, we start by saying that reporting on the number of decent jobs created, it's mandatory. You have to report on this. We provide you with an Excel template, which is a standard template, so you need to use the template provided. There is no need to reinvent the wheel and try to use your own template because it's gonna create a problem for us during analysis. We say that we do not want a PDF and the Word document on the folder allocated for on this portal allocated for jobs, but again, it does not allow you to put a PDF or a Word in any case. I think this one I will not go into details because I think Donald has already spoke about this. Why a standardized template? A standardized template provides a consistent and comprehensive way to collect and submit information. In addition, using a standard template avoids ambiguity, inconsistency, and incompleteness. So if everyone starts submitting using their own template, so we will find inconsistent information and it will be difficult to capture it and analyze it. So we show in terms of how to complete a template on the top spreadsheet there. And then below we show that if you do not create any employment, you do not leave it blank. You just populate not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. Remember, if you leave it blank or you don't submit, it is regarded as non-reporting. What is it that you are not supposed to do? Please do not ignore this requirement. So as saying to PROs, they must not ignore the reporting requirement on jobs. We say to PROs, they must not use their own template, they must not ignore instructions, and they must not intentionally avoid submitting evidence. Again, we need to be mindful of the marginalized, which is your youth, women, and people with disabilities. So we require that the distribution be made in terms of this demographics, in terms of the jobs created. So how many of the people that we employed were women, how many were youth, how many were men, in that order. So we look at submission of evidence, what type of evidence is required. The first and most important that we require that you submit ID for employment that has been created. Some people submit employment contract which say customer has been employed to do A, B, C, D. We also accept that. Yeah, some also submit payroll register. And then we say any other appropriate evidence. So we will evaluate if this evidence is appropriate and acceptable. And if it's acceptable, we shall take it. I did mention that the reason we started with this presentation last day is because there were challenges and then we wanted to address the challenges. So some of the challenges include evidence not provided on the system. So you say you created X number of jobs, but when we look for evidence, it's not there. I've already spoken about this, PROs not using the template provided. So if we give you a template and then you decide to use your own template, then it becomes problem because people's views are different. Clarifications on the number of jobs tracked. Is it the PRO's jobs or the recyclers' jobs forming part of the scheme? This is one of the things that initiated the frequently asked questions that I spoke about earlier in terms of addressing some of these questions. Number 4, decision on whether to include informal jobs, i.e. waste picker, as indirect jobs or not. Again, we have explained this in the previous slides. And then the main challenge is the low or non-reporting of jobs created by the PROs on the EPR system. I repeat, the main challenge is the low or non-reporting. So if you are not reporting, we know that the unemployment is a problem in the country. So we are just trying to ascertain number of employment created in the waste sector. So if you are not reporting already, we will have low numbers in terms of employment created, and we don't want that. This challenge can potentially undermine the impact of Section 18 on the waste economy. So if you look at contribution in terms of GDP, they might say that the waste economy's contribution is low compared to others because of non-reporting. So we encourage PROs to report not only on number of jobs, but on all the requirements that they need to report on. But because this presentation speaks about the improving reporting on jobs, we also encourage it. So we're gonna look at some of the statistics that we've got. So overall, last year, 15,557 jobs were created, of which 14,934 were created by PROs and producers. 203 jobs were created by one of our sector entity, Waste Bureau, and one of our initiative, RESP, created about 420 jobs. Now on the bar graph, we concentrate on the jobs that were created by PROs and producers. So if you look at indirect jobs, we say in 2022, only 33 were reported. But if you go to 2023, there was an increase because now suddenly we had 2,854 indirect jobs created. If you look at direct jobs, we moved from 2,845 to 12,703 between 2022 and 2023. In terms of waste pickers, you can see that we are sitting at 20,000 for both years. So the difference there is sort of immaterial or insignificant. Overall, if you look at the number of jobs created or waste pickers supported between 2022 and 2023, we see that there was an increase of about 12,000 between the 2 years. In general, we said that there is a significant growth in the number of jobs created or supported by PROs and producers in 2023 compared to 2022. However, the number of waste pickers supported declined during the same period, possibly indicating their integration. We know about waste pickers integration guidelines. So we look at the types of employment reported on the EPR system. So on the left-hand side, we look at employment created in the informal sector or formal sector. So we can see that what we are saying that is from 12,080 formal jobs were created. That's 81% of the 14,000 jobs that I mentioned earlier. If you look at informal jobs, we say it was 2,854. So here it's formal, informal, excluding waste pickers. We look at the waste stream or products where employment was created the most. So if you look at our distribution, you see that most of the people that were employed were in the paper and packaging sector. That's about 97%. So in terms of what I've covered, so I'm doing a recap and concluding. So we look at ways of improving reporting on jobs. So the first thing is that if we want to improve reporting on jobs, we need to understand challenges. And some of the challenges include no reporting, which is a challenge. The second one is non-use of the template. If we provide you with a template and you don't use it, it's a problem. Again, evidence not provided. Sometimes we might discard some of the work that has been generated because we did not provide evidence, which is a problem. How do we improve this, or what is the benefits of eradicating these challenges? Non-reporting is always not good because you are not complying. So we will be promoting compliance. Using of templates, so this is just harmonizing. So we'll have a harmonized reporting. Why evidence? So if there is a proof that jobs were created, auditing, reporting requirements, and then we look at what to expect in the future. So we are looking ahead. So after doing these presentations to PROs and producers, so we expect that they will always be reporting compliance because they know what to expect in terms of reporting. We hope that they will always report on time. We hope that they will attach correct documents, use relevant reporting templates. It's very important. Submission of relevant evidence. And then again, Donald presented about the portal and the challenges and the good things about it. So if you say XYZ is not working, we can make modifications on the system. Okay, and then again, we will have improved and sustained working relationship between DFFE and even PROs and producers. This should be the last slide. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you
Over
very
to you,
much.
Peter.
Thank you very much, Cadman, for that detailed explanation on the jobs and reporting. I think just in the spirit of time, we can move directly into the Q&A. So I just want to go through the chat, and there are some questions that are very similar and can be answered at one time. and I'll go through that now. But one of the first questions is, and if the respondent from DFFE, if you can please just raise your hand if you're going to answer the questions, please. When a producer imports identified products, should the declaration that they import be based on the quantity of products imported or the quantity that is sold? Who's going to take that question? I can't see the hands. If you can. Yes, Jeremiah, you can go.
Thanks, Patricia. Well, that one is the quantity of the product imported.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We will move to the ones that haven't been answered. So I see there's a theme in terms of the definition of producer when it comes to independent power producer, PV installers, and so forth. And who is the actual obligated party in terms of who is the obligated party to comply with the regulations? So if you can perhaps ask that, is it the question here is it the manufacturer, the importer, the procurer, the eventual owner? So if you can perhaps just give some more clarity on that. I mean, the way we understand it, it's the importer that signs the importation documents, but if somebody can please respond to that. DFFE?
I will attempt, but my colleagues will come in, Patricia, as well. I wanted to indicate that you see, if, for example, when you talk of a manufacturer, we talk of a local manufacturer. So if a product maybe has been imported, definitely it was not manufactured locally. You see, I just want to provide that clarity. So if this IPP, it triggers any of the persons identified in the notice, then and meaning the person producing that particular product, then that person then becomes a producer. But if it's an importer, definitely it's not. Then it can't be a manufacturer. It should be that importer because that product was not manufactured in the country. So I'm not sure if that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, so the local manufacturer is obligated, but the importer of any product is obligated. Okay, I see. There's it's only DFFE to answer, please. To me, are you from DFFE?
No. I'm not. I'm from Zanzi Energy Consortium. No. Private sector, IPP.
Okay, are you going to ask a question?
Yes, I wanted to ask you a question.
Okay, can I just run through the Q&A first and I'll come back to you?
Okay, sure.
Okay, all right. Then there was a question for the backdated fees. Please confirm that they must be in accordance with the concurred and published fees for 2022 and 2023.
That's correct, Patricia.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm just looking here. Yes, the presentations and the recording will be made available. And then there's one here. Can you offer more clarity on the life cycle assessments? Will they be prepared by make and model or more generically? Can anybody from DFFE answer that question? Sharon?
Thanks, Patricia, for that question. The life cycle assessments, the minimum requirements are specified in the regulations that you need to meet. We are not prescribing how you need to conduct the life cycle assessment. We have been approached by producers as well as PROs about, the fact that it's expensive and that we might need to look at a different approach. And hence the CSIR through Department of Science and Innovation has developed a guideline that producers can use in order to decide how they want to conduct their life cycle assessment, and provided that the minimum requirements that are set in the regulations are met in conducting those life cycle assessment. So a generic, is a generic based on the same type of product with by different producers. It is possible. So all options that you can consider are indicated in that guideline. So we can provide you with the details of the guideline at a later stage once it's made public by the DSI. But you can contact us directly, and we will make sure that you get the details, or you can get it through Zimkita. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that, Sharon. And then I've got one here that hasn't been answered. In the intent of EPR fees to support waste pickers directly as a class of jobs to benefit, when I speak to them on the streets during the early hours of the morning, they have not experienced any change since the introduction of the EPR program. The funds likely stop in the pocket of the facilities to which they supply only. Anybody want to make a comment on that from DFFE?
Yes, I can respond. It is true that it's very likely that the waste pickers are not yet being paid the fee as mandated in the EPR regulations. We know for a fact that some of them has approached the department with this specific complaint. There have been indications that there are delays in getting the database, the waste picker registration database, up and running. The requirement is that, as mentioned by my colleagues earlier, there needs to be evidence of waste pickers being compensated. And that evidence then requires that there should be some form of registration where we can identify and be able to verify who exactly have been paid. So we will not, as a department, accept a report that says we've paid 20 waste pickers without necessarily having their names as well as ID numbers or any form of identification being indicated as an evidence of their existence. There are some PROs who are already having some form of systems of registering the waste pickers that they work with, and they compensate either through the buyback centers or collection facilities or any other service provider within the value chain. But indeed, most of them have yet to realize this benefits from the EPR regulations.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I see one here that wasn't answered. What is the quantity thresholds that need to be declared in terms of the EEE and lighting notice that you presented?
Well, I'm not sure what declaration means. It's a declaration when you import in the product. We don't have any thresholds for declaration of EE that has to be imported. We only have set targets that needs to be met, and the determination of the fee based on what you as a producer place on the market. So you do see thresholds being specified in the paper and packaging sector notice. There are no such thresholds in the EE and the lighting, and as well as the portable battery notices or any other notices. Only the paper and packaging where you see thresholds specified.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very cognizant of time. I think we started at 12:05. We can give it another 2 minutes. So Tumi, yes, I give you the opportunity to ask your question.
Okay, thank you. My question is, we are operating in the IPP space. So all I need to know is I'm trying to find resonance in a sense. Does the EPR cover IPP space? If so, would we then need to comply for the sake of compliance, or are there any incentives basically for IPPs to be able to seek this compliance with government? I suppose those are the two questions that I have to ask you. The second The third question that I need to ask, it's related to the landfill space. I think earlier on, Jeremiah was covering, it did allude to some of the compliances that waste management that actually do apply around collection of waste and then landfills. But the question that I was asking myself is, when you look at the landfill space, it is easy for any power producer to say, I can be able to install a plant in a power generation plant in a landfill. Do the power plants in a landfill space, are they also being covered as well, or are there any incentives even for them to be able to be covered, or do they have to comply with the regulations as they apply to EPR regulations? I hope
okay. I don't know if you can answer that very quickly, Sharon. We're just over time here. If you can answer that. Yep.
Yeah, so a power producer, well, it depends. Are you the manufacturer of the equipment that you are using in producing the power? The obligated party is the person or the producer of the equipment, electrical equipment that you would have utilized in creating your power plant. So if that is not clear, it depends on where then would you fall as a producer. Remember, our producer definition covers brand owners, covers OEMs, covers importers. So if you are the original manufacturer of the equipment that you have installed in manufacturing your power plant, then you can say you are an obligated party. If you have imported directly the equipment that you are using in your power plant, then you are a producer. However, if there is someone else who's manufacturing these products and who's importing them, and it's you're simply, procuring or contracting people to do the installation, the person who first puts these products on the market that you have utilized in manufacturing your power plant is the obligated party. And then talking to the compliance about power plants that are in landfill space, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, but I think that they are completely separate. If you're operating a power plant where there's a landfill, it all goes back to the products that you have used in the power plant that you are operating, wherever you're operating it. Those products, if they fall within any of the notices that we've mentioned, then yes, the manufacturer of the product itself is the obligated party. Why we mention brand owners is for instances where we are unable to identify who's the manufacturer, and the brand carries the brand, the product itself that we as normal people see carries a brand like Samsung. Then Samsung is the obligated party. Samsung can come to us and say, no, it's actually we're just a brand owner, but we don't necessarily manufacture these things. Well, we don't know who that person is unless you can tell us who is manufacturing a product that carries your brand, and then we can hold that person responsible as an obligated party. Otherwise, the brand we see is a brand that is obligated. I hope that clarifies. Maybe just a quick one, Patricia, also to mention that producers can contact the department directly with the contact details that you can get after this session, I'm sure. And also, we've had instances where, the renewable energy sector saying our products have a longer lifespan. We want to be separated from, other types of products. Yes, you can do that. In fact, other countries are doing it, where you can have a specific EPR scheme that only talks to your type of products, and you are satisfied that your specific needs are being catered for without being clustered with other, shorter lifespan products. You can definitely do that. However, that doesn't take away the fact that currently you are already obligated to meet the EPR obligations. So the sooner you decide on which approach you're going to take, the better. You can approach the department with the motivation explaining why you want to be separated, and the department can consider it and look at, whether it will work or not. Thank you.
Okay, so Sharon, so what you're simply saying is that if I import and install, I'm not obligated.
You definitely are.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. You have
Okay.
answered me. Thank you.
I think this is the very last question for today. We have one hand up, Carl Keller. If you can please ask your question.
Good afternoon. Now, I was just wanting to ask, you guys mentioned earlier that we can reach out to the DFFE if we have any questions or want some more information. So Samkita also mentioned now, if you guys can just share the contact details of the official that we can consult with or talk to, we would appreciate that.
Okay, no problem. That will be done. Thank you. I think that brings us to the end of today's session. If there's any unanswered questions within the Q&A, please can I ask any of the DFFE to address those questions, but you can send them back, and we can send that out if there's any answers to these questions. And also, yes, reach out to SAPIA for any further engagements or questions that you have, or to the DFFE themselves. So that's on that way forward. Before we close, I would like Kabetswe Sisoko from Green Cape just to quickly, she wants to just do a quick announcement. If you can come take the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Patricia. I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, proceed.
Can you hear me? Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to share that Green Cape has published a brief on the end-of-life management of solar PV. And so the brief is basically written for solar PV producers to inform them about EPR regulations and obligations for the producers, as well as businesses looking to establish or expand end-of-life solutions for solar PV products. And we also highlight a bit of what happens to the modules once they've reached end of life. And so in light of that, we're also planning a follow-up plenary session with the aim to discuss the relevance of EPR in the solar PV sector specifically. And we will also be having some PROs speak about the type of support that they provide for the industry, as well as highlighting a few relevant end-of-life solutions. So this event is scheduled to take place on the 19th of September from 10 to 12, and it will be followed by a networking session at the Green Cape offices. So if you are a manufacturer, importer, brand owner of solar PV products, as well as PROs or an end-of-life solution, then this might be relevant for you. So you can just reach out to me. I've put a little brief as well as my email address in the chat box. So please feel free to reach out to me, and I can provide more information. And yeah, that's pretty much it, just in light of time.
Thank you, Kabetswe. I just also want to thank the organizers for inviting me to be the facilitator today. I'm not sure if Retabile is available to do the closing, Zimkita.
Yes, she is here.
Okay, I'm going to pass the floor to SAPIA CEO, Retabile. Thank you. You can close the session.
Thank you very much, Patricia. You've done an excellent job in facilitating the session. I found it quite informative and the presentations quite enlightening. So thanks to you, not just for facilitating, Patricia, but for leading the environmental working group. And I'd like to invite all members of SAPVIA who may not be currently participating in these working groups to do so. These are the kinds of activities that the working groups lead. And so thank you, Patricia and the team. A special thank you to the DFFE team, all the speakers. I'm not able to mention you all by name because of the time constraints, but thank you very much for your preparation and enlightful presentations. I'd like to also thank the Subvia team, Zim, Pam, Divet, and the rest of the team for organizing the session, and to everybody who attended, the 120 plus people that were on this call. We really appreciate your participation and your support, and we'll meet again soon at the Green Cape webinar. But if there are any follow-up sessions after that one, we will let you know, and the information will be shared as promised. So thank you, everybody, for your time, and have a good afternoon further. Thanks. Patricia, over to you, or should we just adjourn the meeting? Thank you, everyone.
I think with that, please, you can reach out to anybody as indicated in the webinar before. And I thank you. I thank the speakers, and thank you, Sophia, for arranging this. It's really important for awareness and to get the correct messaging out there. Thank you very, very much. And I formally close the session today. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye, everybody.
Tumi, was that a new hand?
Zamgita, sorry, I just
Yes.
wanted to follow up again on the contact details for official at DFFE we can make contact with. That was not shared yet.
Okay. I will get the contact person from the DFFE colleagues and then send it to you. Do you mind just putting your email address in the chat box?
I will do so.
All right. Thanks, Carl. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Bye. Bye.